The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mind Garden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions. Another audio cast from the Sandy and Toddcast. Time for Season 2, Episode 6. It's Tarot 101 Part 2, Sandy, and we're going to have some fun.
Part 2, Todd, and this week we're going to highlight Sudie and Brother Zeeke. I love saying Brother Zeeke. 2 of our 4 amazing, intuitive tarot card readers.
They are very different from one another, but the one thing they have in common is, I think, in general, they have kind hearts, and so I think this will be another great audio cast.
Love makes the world go round, Todd.
You got it. Season 2, Episode 6, Tarot 101 Part 2 is on the way next on the Sandy and Toddcast.
What, you beautiful souls? I'm so excited to have this platform where I can share my gifts, the things that I do, what we need to do as a collective energy to really step into soul's path. Reiki and healing and alignment. Oh my goodness, these are all so very important in what we do. I have a daily podcast that I do. You can find me on Spotify and Anchor for your daily vibes, your energies as a collective unit, right? You can also find me on my Facebook page where I really go more in depth with it, but you can find me at Mystic Karma by Victoria.
Broadcasting from 2 very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
Another Sunday, another audio cast from the Sandy and Toddcast.
Oh, I like how you say that. I like how you said that. Hi, Todd.
We're going to get rid of our announcer and I'll just do it all. I'll do everything as God.
Because you need more on your plate. Now you can become God.
The Sandy and Toddcast.
There we go.
Maybe we'll change it to the Sandy and Godcast.
I love it. I love it. This is going to be a really fun week. We're continuing our Tarot 101 series with Sudie Crouch and Brother Zeeke Harris. And Zeeke is from St. Louis, Missouri.
Yep.
And Sudie is all the way down in Georgia. In this tiny little cabin, Todd, this little in the woods.
She actually lives in northern Georgia in the mountains.
Yeah.
But she's in this little cabin in the middle of nowhere where the spooks are out at night. In fact, she was telling us a couple of days ago about another incident that she had happen out on her land. And the thing is, you're going to hear about some of that, I think, in this conversation with her this week. So
she's always got stories, and I love that. Sudie is a great storyteller. So it'll be really interesting today to listen to Sudie's journey, her stories, and really get to know Sudie. And Zeeke is a character. We didn't even know if he would be wearing clothes when he was on our live cast. 2
words, boy witch. I mean, that's pretty much what I have to say about that.
He is, and he's fantastic. And like I said, 2 hearts of gold. And just, love makes the world go round, and these people just want to help.
One thing I wanted to mention, we've got so much going on, and the best thing to do is join us on Facebook, search for the Sandy and Toddcast, become a member of our group that we also have on Facebook. What is it called? Weirdos of the Todd. I can't remember. Friends.
I don't know why though. It's the Stay Weirdos Friends of the Sandy and Toddcast.
Stay Weirdos. That's what it is. At any rate, join us there as well. There's conversations going on and all that kind of stuff. Look for our live casts. We post events on our Facebook page and all that kind of stuff. So follow those, and you can actually click on like a subscribe button, which will allow you to get instant notifications when we schedule new stuff. You'll be the first to know.
And that makes it so easy. And we have so many fun things. We talk to paranormal investigators. We just talked to a man in Australia named David Black, who is a writer, producer. He has an amazingly great film coming out, feature film called Badass Bunyip. We talked to him. That will be an audio cast at some point. But it's always fun to get to see what we're doing when we record the audio version. Even the Tarot 101 and the Woo Woo Wednesday, always a lot of fun.
Yeah, join us live. And if you can't, you can always go back and watch stuff. And I also implore you to go back to older episodes of the podcast as well. Whatever you listen to it on, whether it's Facebook or Spotify or whatever the heck it is, go all the way back and kind of learn where things got started.
And if you're having fun, if you really enjoy what we're doing, leave us a review. That's the best way to spread the word about us and let people know that we're there, is by leaving those great reviews. That really helps us a lot, and we're really appreciative of that.
All right, before we get to the podcast, I have something for you. So we mentioned in one of our live casts this week that The Conjuring 3 is coming out.
Yeah.
And I think somebody was surprised there was a Conjuring 3, and yet there's like 8 movies in the Conjuring series that are actually out now.
And I had no idea.
The thing about the Conjuring series that I really like is it's loosely based on Ed and Lorraine Warren. Okay. So here's what I thought. Okay, so we've lost Ed and Lorraine. Lorraine we just lost in like the last year or something like that. In fact, she was in the first Conjuring movie. I don't know if you knew that. Did you know that?
Yes, I did know that. Yes, I did.
So that's a little Easter egg for you. You can look for Lorraine Warren in the actual first Conjuring. But here's what I wanted to ask you. Let's say 20 years from now, there's a film about 2 podcasters. And they do a film. Maybe it's not about us, but somehow we are involved in this film.
Okay.
Okay. Who would you want to play you?
Oh, I just said the word badass. And I think that the coolest badass, I would want somebody who was paranormal affiliated.
Okay.
Okay, so I think the coolest badass woman that I know in the paranormal world today would probably be Michelle Belanger.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would love to see her be part of my movie.
Okay. See, now that takes a whole different twist on it. I didn't really put the paranormal spin on it. If I had to choose somebody from the paranormal world, to play me, I might want
tough one.
Well, it would be a tough one.
Yeah.
I think I would want Jawan from the
he
Ghost
would
Brothers.
Be great.
Yeah.
He would be great. I would love to get them on our podcast at some point.
We're working on it.
I know. He would be great.
But you know who I'd really want? Like if I could have like a star.
Yeah.
I would want the guy who plays Wolverine. What's his name?
Oh.
Hugh Jackman.
Yes.
That's who I would want.
All right, let me think real quick, because if I had somebody from the acting world, I'd probably want it to be Melissa McCarthy. I love her.
That would be a great combination, actually. Those two.
I love her. Yes, I think it would be great to have her play me in a movie. That's a great question. It really is.
The Melissa and Hugh cast is what they'll call it at that point. At any rate, it's time for our audio cast. We're going to talk now. We're going to start off with Sudie Crouch. This is Season 2, Episode 6. It's Tarot 101, Part 2, and it starts right now, the Sandy and Toddcast. Please welcome, for the first time on the Sandy and Toddcast, an old friend of the show, Sudie Crouch, ladies and gentlemen. Nice round of applause. Direct from Skinwalker's town in Georgia. We were actually talking the other night. She said that she thinks there's skinwalkers out in the woods around her cabin.
It wouldn't surprise me.
We have had some really strange things happen since we've moved here in 2005. And everywhere, well, I wouldn't say the house I grew up in that I had weird things happen. But when I moved to LaGrange, I had really weird things happen at that house and even in the park there. But when we moved here, I'm thinking, oh, it's peaceful. It's so quiet. You don't have to be worried, you're going to get shot in a drive-by or, a meth head's going to break in through the window in the middle of the night.
No, right. Listen, really, are you sure about that?
The dirt road I live on, they're probably more scared they'll get, like chased by some coyote or something. And it started, and see, my grandmother, just to give you a little bit of backstory, my grandmother was half Native American. And so she was like into like all this woo-woo stuff. It was just second nature for her to do stuff like this and to know things. And she was kind of like, remembering the Lost Boys, the grandfather at the end that says, one thing I couldn't stand about Santa Carla was all the vampires.
Right. No, it was actually all the damn vampires.
But so I didn't know if they would, let you boost it if we said a bad word.
Whatever.
And so we were here, and I can remember like one day I was sitting in the living room with our son, and we have this big window in between built-in bookcases, and it looks out over the backyard and the woods behind us. Well, my husband, Lamar, thought it was really funny to come up and look in the window because he knows that kind of stuff spooks me.
Right.
Well, I screamed. I was holding our son, and at the time, Cole was like maybe 14, 15 months old. And at first, he kind of screamed too, just because I did. And then he pointed and laughed, and he turned around and he grabbed my face and he said, "Mama, it's Papa." And so I was like, uh-huh. And so I'm telling my husband, the headline's going to be, "Man gets shot." And he's like, "You don't have a gun. You don't know how to use a gun. You're scared of guns. That's not going to happen." And I'm like, headline's going to be, "Man gets shot." So I'm thinking he's learned his lesson. He thinks I'm, might shoot him. It was a Monday night. And I remember specifically because we were getting ready to watch American Idol, because it was back when it was halfway good. Mm-hmm. And my husband was taking the garbage can down like to the end of our driveway. And our driveway is really long. And we have to go like off-roading to get out of our driveway and in our driveway. That's how in the boonies it is. Well, I was getting Cole ready for bed. So I'm in his room. And when we bought the house, it had like these lace curtains. And he's just a baby. So I'm not thinking anything of it, but I hate lace curtains. And I've always had a thing about windows. Windows have always freaked me out. I'm fine if they're open during the day. That's great. Let the sunshine in. The minute it starts getting a little bit dusk, close them suckers up. So I'm putting Cole on his bed, like to get him ready. And because usually we would lay in there, and if I laid with him, we could watch American Idol through the door, and he would fall asleep. And then I could get up and I could, pretend I was house cleaning and do dishes and laundry and stuff. Well, he looks at the window and he points. And I'm like, okay. And then I thought, is Lamar looking in the window at night, at 8:00 at night? And I start towards it, and then Cole goes, and he lets out this but it was like he froze. So for a baby to freeze, because kids have that, they're like fresh from the universe. They don't really know to, try to rationalize something.
Right,
they just know their instincts.
Right. Yep.
And he was like going, and I walk over towards the window, and as I'm walking, I'm saying, "Lamar, you really are about to get your shot." And I move the lace curtain, and the only way I can describe it is like, remember in Karate Kid, the outfits that like Johnny and the Cobra Kai's wore, that was like the skeleton things at Halloween with like the...
Yes.
That was in the window. I don't know what it was, but I grabbed up Cole. And we had a baby gate because for some reason this little cabin didn't have doors except on like 3 rooms. And I did like the track runner from the Olympics over. I was like Usain Bolt going over the baby gate and go running outside. And we had 3 German Shepherds at the time. And they were all on the porch watching my husband, who I see at the end of the driveway coming back because I see the flashlight. And I'm screaming, "Lamar!" And he's like, "What?" He gets up there, goes outside with the flashlight and the dogs, and doesn't see anything. And what was so specific was he looked around the window. There was no footprints. I tell my grandmother, I said, something was looking in. And this is like, in this area, there's like the Trail of Tears. There's been a whole lot of stuff going on in this area, from like all kinds of wars and stuff and just brutality. I tell my grandmother, and she just matter-of-factly goes, "Skinwalker."
Ew.
And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
Never heard that phrase ever. But she's like, "Yeah, that's what it was. It was a skinwalker." And I was like, "What is that?" And she said, "There's different terms for it." She said, "And some people will tell you it's like a Native American witch. Some people will tell you it's something that has taken on the soul of something else." She said, "But it ain't good." And I said, what in the holy HE double hockey sticks do I need to do? She said, you better salt that place. So
Yeah.
I'm out here doing laps around the house with salt. I'm thinking this is a good way for the neighbors to not bother us. You know, they're like, that girl's crazy. And reciting the 23rd Psalm as I circle it like 3 times, and my husband out there, are you done? Not yet. I got to do another lap. So that was the first thing. Then we've had other ghosts, but the other skinwalker that I think I saw was a couple of years ago. We had, at the time, 2 outdoor cats. Sexy Frank is now inside. He's formerly feral, but now he's kind of domesticated. He lets us live here. And I was going
He
out.
allows you.
He allows it. We were, I was going out to feed him. And it was like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning kind of thing, because I was having to feed him before I went to work. And it was real foggy that morning. And I feed him like under the carport of the barn. So I'm walking out there, and Frank's waiting for me to put the food in. And then all of a sudden he looks over, and behind our house, there's a creek. And then there's like a little hill, and there's all these woods and everything. But the creek's pretty wide. I mean, it goes deep down, like there's a deep ravine, and you couldn't just step over it. We've got like a little footbridge that goes over in one area and stuff. So it's not exactly like something just anybody could hop, skip over.
Right.
And I see something because he was looking, and he let out this like little kitty growl. And I'm thinking at first, okay, maybe it's somebody that was hunting back on the property behind us, because we have actually had people, you know, that we see hunting that would let us know, hey, you know, we're going to be back there, so don't freak out. And I'm like, they wouldn't be out this early. It was a work day, and then whatever, and it didn't walk like a human. As it started coming through the fog a little bit more, I was like, okay, is that a bear? We've got bears up here. Frank and I saw a bear one day. Frank looked in horror as his human mother ran after the bear, trying to capture it, because I wanted to pet it.
Oh my God.
But then it stepped across the creek. And that's when Frank let out this deep growl. And I said, I think we need to get up to the house. And so we ran up to the house, and Bella, our other little cat, was coming up, and she thankfully ran up to the deck. She went over to eat, but Frank stood there, and he watched off the deck to see what it was. And he was very just kind of scared. And the only thing I could figure is that was like a cryptid. It was a skinwalker. It wasn't a bear, because it didn't really move like a bear. And it wasn't a human, so it wasn't even a drunk neighbor that, you know, was like finding their way home at 5:30 in the morning.
The walk of shame.
It wasn't one of our drunk neighbors doing the walk of shame. So the only thing I could figure, and from what I've read, is that it may have been definitely something of the paranormal realm.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like, do you know that even most Native Americans won't talk about skinwalkers audibly? Like, they won't verbally discuss skinwalkers, because they believe that if you do, it will come for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of them won't even discuss it.
Well, you guys are in big trouble tonight, because I haven't, you guys been talking about it for like 10 minutes now. So,
well, I've got the sage, so I'm going to.
They fascinate me. We have to do a whole episode on the skinwalker.
We'll have to have Sudie back to tell her story again.
I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be great. Oh, wow.
Sudie and I met each other like what, 2006 was it? Is that when we met each other?
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've known each other a long time. We both worked in radio, and then we kind of moved on from that. And she's lived in the cabin the entire time. And I'm just completely surprised that she's still there, because she is so non-woodsy cabin-y kind of person. And yet there she is with her sage and her, you know, Morton salt, so she can, you know, salt the and all that kind of stuff. And so we've known each other a long time, and what I've always known about her is she is very, and I don't say this as a throwaway line, but she's very woo-woo in that her thinking is always very deep. Her thinking is always very kind, empathic, all that kind of stuff. If you tick her off, you're the wrath of God's going to hit you pretty hard. But in the main sense, she really does care about people and good things. So I wanted to have her on because over the years, I know she's got some things that she's done, and I know that she does read cards and all that kind of stuff. But you've kind of shifted your focus over the years with many different ways of helping people. And I want to talk a little bit about your Facebook page and what you're up to right now before we start reading cards a little bit later on. So tell us about your Facebook page, first of all.
Well, I started probably in like 2011 and 2012, somewhere around there. I got a certification in life coaching, and I wanted to help people. I didn't want to go the counseling route, but I wanted to help coach people to help them move forward instead of technically going backwards and looking at stuff. And that kind of evolved into focusing on my spiritual practice. I saw I could kind of marry the two and have a way to kind of use that as a holistic approach to really bring in that mind, body, spirit. And then as it's just kind of progressed over the years, I've let it evolve naturally. And because one thing you just can't deny, like that spirit side. And so I've really focused on trying to help people like with their life purpose. That's been a big one. And then of course, there's all things like relationship, career, sometimes just general, information, how to help folks. And the one thing, like I was telling y'all earlier, I have found that people, when they come to either coaching or for a reading, they already know what to do. They know what they need to do. They know the steps. They just kind of need that validation. And so I use the cards as a way to just kind of open up that conversation and to give them that space to where they can either say something they've been a little scared to say or admit, either to themselves or even saying it out loud. And it helps them start thinking about the process, about what they want to do. Because like if you start doing a reading, then you can say, well, this is kind of like what the cards are telling me. Do you think this is true? And usually when I do most of my readings, I give them like a PDF. I do the reading first and put everything out there because I put other stuff in there like the numerology and things like that and say, this is some themes. This is what I'm seeing. These are patterns that are appearing. And then send it to them and say, let's start the conversation.
Gotcha.
And that really helps them start, getting a big overview so they can know where to kind of narrow it down on.
You talked about like spirit and spirituality and things like that. And I know some things about you. I know at one point you were a practicing Wiccan. I know that you've also been involved with Christianity and the church and all that kind of stuff. Do you see a point where all of that kind of comes together, where people can use all of that knowledge and all of that power in the same way, or does it have to be so separated?
I think, and one of the things that I've kind of felt like, especially with everything that has happened globally the last few years, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of people moving from just like the church and the organized religion to where it's going to be more of an openness and just more of a spirituality and kind of like basic human kindness kind of thing. Yep. There's so many things like if you start looking at all the different religions, there's so many things that are the same that apply. Like, Christianity has got Jesus, Zoroastrian, and I'm probably saying that wrong, has Mazda. So there's all these different things, that align, but it's just the way they're presenting it and the stories and the parables that they're using. And it's like, I definitely believe in God and that there's a higher power. I just think that the way it is translated to human use and the way it's been used has just been so bad. And I think we're going to see like the love.
You're right.
That's everything that, that's supposed to be at the bottom of it. It's supposed to be love.
Isn't that the truth? And I feel like my thought is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're right. Aren't we all? We all can relate to each other. We all, no matter whether you're a religion, you're not a religion, The basic element is kindness and humanity in any of these religions. It's kindness and humanity. And so we all have something in common. My husband is Jewish. I was born and raised Roman Catholic. I consider myself to be more spiritual now in my life. I don't necessarily identify as much with the Roman Catholic Church as I did at one point in my life, but aren't we all here for kindness and humanity and just being good? That's what it's about.
Well, and I think, too, one of the things, and I had a conversation with somebody about this the other day, the question to me was, what makes you the saddest? And I think the thing that makes me the saddest and also the angriest in life is the me attitude that we tend to have in some parts of the world. And what I mean by that is, well, if we do this, how does this affect me? And that's what we hang on to, and that's what we base our decisions on. Instead of, well, if we do this, how will this better the community, the country, the world? And I think if we change our attitude and less me and more us, I think that love will shine through, no matter what religion, because I think all religions do kind of practice. Those religions do teach that. It's all about us as a community whole,
Yes.
To do for others and all that kind of stuff. For some reason, as Sudie mentioned, it's been translated to be more about, well, how does that affect me and the money I bring home and in my house and my family? There's a protective part of us that wants to protect those that we love, and I get that. But the problem that people don't realize is when you take care of other people and you give back to your community and your neighbors and all that kind of stuff, that comes back to you. That's where it comes back to you. So,
I don't want to get off on this tangent, but just to mention it, the past year, I think I've noticed myself that the people who began last year, kind people, open people, generous community, family, other person-oriented people, just embraced it and became even better people. They became, and then there were some people who kind of took it as a lesson and started to go down that path. And there are some people who are just never going to look at it that way. But I think I have seen a lot of people who just genuinely it's made them think, and it's made them open themselves up more to family and the other person mentality and, your community duty, your civic duty, your human duty to help others and be there. I've seen some really great stories too. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about Granny for a minute because you always had great stories for me. How much corn did she keep in her freezer? I mean that.
Oh my God. She had a stand-up freezer full of corn, and when she found out Todd liked corn, every time I would go see her, she would say, "Do you want to send some of this to Todd?" I was like, "He's in Wisconsin. You can mail it."
Okay. All right. My first question: why did she keep so much corn?
She loved it.
She just loved it, so she just stocked up?
She loved it. And it's a joke because she would always ask us, "Do you love corn? Or do you?" And so anytime we have corn, my husband will go, "Do you love corn?" And he told her one time, "I wouldn't marry it, Granny." And she looked at him and she was like, "You smart."
Yeah. The reason why I wanted to bring her up is I know that she was very woo-woo too in her own way. Was your mom that way? Is your mom that way too? Or did it skip a generation? Or did it lessen, get stronger over the years? Tell me a little bit about that.
Granny was very woo-woo. She was which she, went to church every Sunday, president of her Sunday school class, but she was very in tune to different things. She could tell you things that would happen. She, one of her things was like dream cognition. And she could pick up on stuff in a dream and tell you, this is what's going to happen. And she could read coffee grounds and was really, and it would be kind of scary. And then my mom could read cards. That's kind of where I picked up because she didn't use like a regular, and I don't know if it's tarot or tarot. I've called it tarot, but I've
heard both.
And she didn't read those. She was scared to death of them because of the death card. And so she would read regular playing cards. And she also would have like premonitions. And it's real funny because right before we started working together, she was up here visiting and she was reading my cards. And my mother's like one of the most genteel little Southern women. You know, she's just, ooh, everything, you know, she's going to be nice. And she's, I bring you joy, I bring you peace. And she's reading my cards and she's like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And I said, what? She said, you're going to work with this man. And she was describing the person that Todd and I both worked for. And she said, he's the king. And I said, the king? And she said, yes. Well, we both know that that was not his name. But when I told him that one day, because I was like, I'm just going to lay it on out there and let them know how weird I am. And it was really, because it was the first time I'd ever had an experience where I could be open and that I was kind of a little weirdo. And they would just look at me and be like, okay. And he was like, I don't believe in any of that crap. I think it's junk. And then when I was telling him certain things and he said, do you know what my nickname was? And I said, what? And he said, I was the king of whatever. And I was like, no way. And
oh my God.
my mom was like, I don't know why you were so shocked. I told you so. But she's very intuitive and it's to the point. I mean, when I was a teenager, I hated it because she would say, I don't think you should go there. And I would be like, you just were trying to control me. And she was like, I have a feeling. And I was like, you have bad feelings anytime it means I'm going outside of the city limits of Monroe, Georgia.
Yeah, but I know the stories about you. You were not a good kid.
I was not a
Oh, come on. Come on. I remember the stories, and I don't remember much, but I remember those.
But she would always track me down, and I would tell people it sucks to have a mom that's a little bit psychic because I can remember lying to her and telling her that we were not going to pick up boys. We were just going to go pick up our friend Carrie from work and go get something to eat. And after we had been cruising around, smoking cigarettes, we pulled back up into the Winn-Dixie parking lot, and there's my mother on top of her Ford Escort, like a little red-headed, fire-breathing hood ornament. And she's got that Virginia Slim 120. And I'm like, how did she know? And she looks at me and says, I'm psychic. Did you forget? And she's trying to pull me out of the window. Not the first time she tried to yank me out of a car window either.
Oh, that's great.
Sudie's also a writer. Do you still do the columns?
I do.
She does some great columns. And so when she tells a story, there's always a good bit of laughter in it a lot of times.
Yes.
So as you can tell.
You're a great storyteller.
Oh my gosh,
great
yes.
Storyteller. Yeah. That's great.
I want to let's throw it out there. We're going to read some cards for you tonight. Sudie's going to read a couple of cards for you. If you've got a specific question, that's fine. Is that okay with you, Sudie?
Yeah.
Okay, or if you just want a general card pulled, go ahead and let us know, and we'll get ready for that in a little bit. But you can start requesting those right now. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like the life coaching and stuff like that. I know you've been working on that for quite some time. When you're dealing with people and you're trying to coach them, have you seen a change in the last few years with COVID, even prior to COVID? With people needing more direction, more guidance in their life? I mean, have you seen any changes in that at all?
Absolutely. I think for a lot of people, this has been like, kind of like the rug got pulled out from under them. And the one thing that I have noticed the most is they need connection. And they have just needed that personal connection, and they've needed to know that somebody cared. And I think, yes, Karen, I would definitely pull a card. But I think that has definitely been something people have been kind of lost. And I think it's also made them realize things were just not the way they were supposed to be. It's kind of like we've all seen that saying that, like, in the rush to return to normal, do we really want to go back to what was normal?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think that has been so unsettling for people because those paradigms have changed. And they're seeing that they didn't need to do all the things that they thought they needed to do, which I'm a total introvert. And
Yeah.
So it's like pandemic hit. My life didn't change other than the fact that like when I did have to go somewhere, I wore a mask.
You're right.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, yes. Yes.
It's funny. And I really feel like we all just got just so thrown off guard. And it seemed to happen overnight. And it continued and continued. And our way of life just completely changed. It's just so different now than it was. And I have to say, Dave and I discussed this numerous times over the past year, but we just discussed it a couple nights ago, how we've come up with some amazing things and amazing changes in response to COVID that I'm hoping that we don't stop. I love the idea of not having to go to Walmart all the time. You can get your groceries delivered. You can do more takeout. And don't get me wrong, I love going into a restaurant. I do go into restaurants. But I drink. Yes, thank you, Todd. And so
I'll have a double.
But we've made changes that I think are actually better than the way we lived before. And I think that's where we see the difference in people. The people who haven't quite been able to adapt, and then the people who have been able to adapt and say, well, it hasn't been that bad. Yes, it's been scary. Yes, it's been annoying. Yes, it's sort of changed the way that we think about the world, but it's not that bad. We've come out of it with some good things too, but it's the fact that we need direction sometimes. We've been so thrown off, just so thrown off by a lot of it.
And I think that has really affected a lot of people because we're used to routines. And that's one of the biggest things that I have heard the last 14 months, however long it's been. My routine has changed. But now I'm hearing things are going back to normal too quickly. I don't know how to adjust. So people are having to learn how to adapt. And I think being flexible and kind of being in that flow and that rhythm is something that has been a good lesson for all. And I am a creature of habit. I like my routine. I am like a cat. I mean, Todd, you probably remember one time something happened and when they said, what's wrong with Sudie? They said somebody petted her fur backwards. So I am totally like a cat. So I get that routine being important. But I think that as we are learning through all of this, the things that are falling our way are things that we didn't need to begin with.
Yes.
Some of those things we're shedding. And that's why it's been so hard because last year was, I believe, a 4-year. Yes, it was a 4-year, and it was a master number year because it was 2020. So it was 2-2.
Right.
That's a big year. So that means this is where we're getting some of these super things in. This year is a year of change. We're kind of getting that foundation back in, but we're learning how to adapt it, how to modify it, and what's working. What wasn't working before was a lot of the, people having to be in an office all the time. I've been working from home now off and on for about 10 years and then full time since 2019. There's so many people that could work from home. I mean, just look at how when the work from home started, how the earth started healing, our atmosphere and pollution was going down, the climate was changing. So I think a lot of that, and I know it's scary. And I mean, that's where a lot of the fear and the anger and everything, it was because anytime we face change, it's scary.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that it's going to eventually, when we can just get around the corner, I think it'll be a lot better, but it's just that process.
I have known her a very long time. She is one of the nicest people I have ever met, and she is a great writer. I mean, if you ever get a chance to read her columns, the Southern Storyteller, so good. She is so good. And by the way, the book she wrote that's loosely based on me is kind of good too. So
I know I have that book, by the way.
Sudie Crouch.
Yeah, Sudie Crouch. I love Sudie. And you know how sometimes you just meet somebody and you feel good?
Yep.
That's Sudie. I just feel good when I'm talking to Sudie. She is a sweetheart and she's so talented.
You feel like you've known her all your life.
I do.
Yeah.
I really do. I feel very comfortable with Sudie. So that was really great.
We're going to take a very quick break here, and then we're going to come back, and you're going to listen to our conversation with Brother Zeeke. Zeeke Harris is on the way next on the Sandy and Toddcast.
Tarot time. If you're listening to this podcast, the divine messages are definitely for you. Let's combine science and magic, shall we? Root cause analysis, business planning, counseling, and good old-fashioned intuitive tarot readings so we can improve your near future circumstances by addressing your present scenarios. Please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. For more in-depth tarot consultations, please book your readings at positivetarotwisdom.com. Infinite love and blessings for everyone.
This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
Season 2, Episode 6, Tarot 101, Part 2. What would this be, like Scene 2 then? Is that what this is? Because I can't keep track. I'm a little dyslexic with numbers, so I can't keep all this stuff straight.
I know. And now we get to learn a little bit more about Zeeke. Zeeke is amazing. Another person that I just feel very comfortable with. I have an affinity for. He's such a great boy witch. And he's so talented. And everybody, again, very different in their approach and the way they do things, but just as talented as the next one of our 4 readers. It's just amazing.
You're right. Sandy and Toddcast, this is Brother Zeeke. Please welcome to the program, Zeeke Harris. Zeeke, thanks for being with us. So, okay, the first thing we see is the hat that says witch, which, by the way, he was not wearing, but we found out, Sandy and I found out that he had the hat, and then we made him put it on.
We
and
did.
It looks really good on you. It looks good.
Thank you. I have to get all my hats an extra large because my head's kind of shaped like So I'm really the only kind of hats I can wear are the flat billed hats.
Well, we appreciate you being on tonight. And one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on is because you and I had talked about possibly starting a podcast, because I believe with your personality and your background, I really think that you could make a very interesting case to do podcasting. And so that's kind of where the talks kind of started.
Yeah, it did. We sort of bonded over our love for the paranormal and the metaphysical and whatnot. And it just sort of grew from there. We've been Facebook pals forever.
Yeah. In fact, let me tell you a story about Zeeke. And I've told this story before, but I'm not sure anybody really knew that Zeeke was the guy. But one of the things that I do is I investigate on a Amazon Prime TV show called Haunted State. And we had done an investigation at a location that I'm not able to talk about. But I walked away from it with a very dark energy around me. I was not possessed. It was nothing like that. But things in my life changed to the point where my vision, literally what I was seeing, was kind of like all the color had been drained. The blues were still kind of there. The grays were there, but everything else was gone. The brilliance of life had left the building, if you will. And I didn't know what to do. I was certain that something had come back with me. And then I found out weeks later that the rest of the team had the same damn thing happen to them. And we didn't tell one another. Why, Sandy? Why didn't we tell one another?
Because you would make fun of us?
No. Because like we always say, you're going to think I'm crazy, but, right?
Yeah. No,
which is a phrase we hate. We hate that phrase. And yet I was thinking it. I didn't want to tell my castmates and my teammates on the investigation, hey, this happened to me. And then when I finally broke down and realized I needed to tell them, every one of them had a similar story. And so at any rate, getting back to Zeeke, I reached out to him and I said, what can I do? Because I knew he was a practicing witch. And I knew that he was kind of into the woo stuff more than I was at the time. And so he helped me. He actually created some spells and designed some candles and herbs and salts and all that kind of stuff, and gave me step by step what I needed to do to not only get rid of whatever had kind of clung on to me, but also protect me going forward. And actually, one of the candles that I have in the studio, I'm sure it's worn out by now as far as any of its magical powers. But I still burn it because it's a good candle and it looks nice in the background. But yeah, one of those candles actually is one of the ones you gave me, Zeeke. So I want to thank you for that, because to have to come to someone and explain how you're feeling, again, thinking, oh, you're going to think I'm crazy. You really treated me with a lot of respect, and I appreciate that.
No problem. I personally think the world's a lot bigger than I think we're willing to realize, and that there's more around us than what meets the eye. And it's to think someone's crazy because they have interactions with this unseen world is sort of you're sort of just telling people that you have a very narrow view of reality.
Right. What do you help other people too? I mean, like, do you have services, if you will? Can people reach out to you if they need something?
I usually do. I usually teach a lot, like lectures and classes. I'll do over like various spiritual practices, like spiritual baths. But people do come to me, like if they think they're dealing with, like if they are experiencing issues with like spirits in the house or ominous presences, kind of like you were. People have come to me with that. People have come to me for readings about spouses. I've got stories about all the things people could try to come and talk to me about. Like even at work in my muggle job, even.
Muggle job.
Like, do people show up at the store or whatever and say, "Hey, help me out"?
I worked at a store one time, and there was a person who. Fun story. First psychic I ever went to, there was a guy who came in who claimed to have problems with seeing spirits in the house, and he was showing me these pictures. And I didn't see anything in the pictures. All I really saw was like piles of dirty laundry. I'm like, sir, that's not a spirit. That's dirty blue tea. But I didn't discount him, because
right.
I could tell that the person was dealing with something. Mm-hmm. And so I did like I did for you, and I gave him steps about like a bathing regimen he could do for a week, like from the new moon to the full moon, or in reverse if he was a little more comfortable from the new moon. From the full moon to the new moon to sort of decrease the presence of that entity.
So I'm going to ask you, and I want you to be honest with me, because again, I have powers here beyond just one of the hosts. Did you the thing you did for me? Was it real, or were you just making stuff up to make me feel better?
That was actually real, because I did spells and I enchanted those candles myself. I did spell work and stuff like that.
Oh my God. I've got Zeeke right in here with me. That's so crazy.
Was that an actual attachment that Todd had? That was an entity actually attached to him?
It was. It kind of reminded me, or made me think of what's the word I'm looking for? Of a succubus or an incubus, but without the sexual interaction.
Right.
Because spirits will attach themselves to people, and they feed off our emotions, especially the negative emotions. And anything they can do to sort of promote those is kind of like it's a veritable golden corral, if you will, if you have them up there. Or it is a buffet, especially with all the negative stuff we're dealing with in the world today. It's just kind of a smorgasbord, and you have to take every precaution necessary. And I like Todd. I tolerate Todd a little bit, and just the thought of him having to deal with those things.
Do I have to get the phone out, Zeeke? Because I will. You don't want me to get the phone out.
Don't make him get the phone out.
I'm going to prepare for it.
We've gone about a week without the phone, so we're on a roll.
Oh God.
But like, and then I tried to. People who do investigations, I believe, don't go in with a proper respect for the energy that's bouncing around. I'm not like you guys do, but there's people out there who will just walk into a place with a flashlight.
Yep.
And no protection, spiritual, physical, whatsoever. And then they usually the spirits end up following them home.
Well, in my situation I don't know that it was necessarily like a specific location or building or something like that. I felt it as soon as because we were on an island. We were on an island off of the off Door County in Wisconsin. So we actually had to take a ferry over and stuff like that. And I got it as soon as we walked on the island. I could feel that things were different. And again, I guess some of the other cast members felt the same thing. Chris says you have great lighting, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Ando. Thank you.
I hope he's talking to you, because mine looks like crap. Okay.
I know. Maybe he's talking to me.
Possibly. I want to talk to you a little bit about more about the witch thing in a minute. But you last year, you were almost not here for this podcast because you almost bit the big one with the big C, the big COVID.
Mm-hmm. In July of last year, I got really, really sick with COVID-19 and had to go to the hospital twice, and breathing problems I never had before. I lost probably about, I would say I was 215 or 210 before COVID, and now I'm sitting at 180 because I'm still dealing with a little bit of the symptoms from it, like arthritis and body aches and stuff of that nature.
I bet because you work with the public, I'm sure that you probably got it that way somehow, some way, shape, or form. But were you as concerned about COVID going into it as you were coming out of it? So, in other words, did you realize that it could be affecting you this long?
I did not. I was not aware of like long hauler symptoms and stuff like that. I was not aware of just how long it could go on for years.
Yeah, and back in July, too, it was very new. The whole idea of long haul symptoms was very new to everybody. And so it wasn't really understood that much. So it has gotten better, though, right, Zeke? Or is it still...
Definitely alleviated. And I've gotten the vaccination and been through the whole process. But I still can't consume, like, animal proteins, and so, which is kind of a nice caveat. And so I just went full vegan at the beginning of this year.
Wow.
And it's been an adventure.
How are you finding that?
It's not nearly as difficult. I'm happy I'm doing it now rather than like 5-10 years ago, because there's a lot more plant-based alternatives now.
Right.
And that is like cruelty-free and kind of like they have plant-based bratwurst.
Well, if you're from the Midwest, especially Wisconsin, and you can find a plant-based bratwurst, you got to do it.
Let's see.
Let's talk more about which. What made you decide to kind of go on this path? How long ago did you say, this was something I'm going to follow? This is something I'm going to educate myself on. This is something I'm going to practice.
Well, before I came out, all this 25 was a very pivotal age for me. And I came out of the closet at 25. And at that point, I was in seminary. I was studying like different courses, like textual criticism of the Bible, like literally studying like the Greek and the Hebrew of the Bible. But the world that I was trying to go into didn't jive very well with what I was dealing with on the inside. And long story short, I just sort of said, okay, guys, I'll see you later. I like boys. And they're like, okay, bye.
Did they say it like that, by the way? Okay, bye.
That is the Zeeke Harris interpretation.
I like it.
That is the Zeeke Harris interpretation. But I've always had a spiritual side ever since I was a child. I just knew there was something bigger out there, and I just wanted to find the proper outlet that didn't feel like, because I just didn't feel what was out there it could honestly care less that I was gay. And I just wanted to find an outlet for what would feed my soul that also taught me personal responsibility as well. That's one of the things that I like about the path that I'm on, is that it teaches personal responsibility and it teaches everybody else personal responsibility.
For those people who are listening and they're a little concerned about the term witch or Wiccan or whatever you want to call it, how do you define what it really means?
To me, a witch were those people who always adhered to the old ways before monotheism really took off. And they were the outliers, the ones who lived on the outskirts of a town and kept watch over a community. And they were the ones that people would go to for advice. Witches and shamans and mystics were the ones people would go to for healing and to talk to whenever they had problems, and to help them if they were dealing with depression or mental issues. That's what a witch does. A witch helps. But to me, witch also means is somebody who speaks up for people who don't have a voice, or whose voices are being held down. That, to me, that's what a witch does.
And so that's the path you're on. And obviously you're very pleased with that. And I think you should be. I think that's great. Lisa says the wise ones.
Exactly.
Very good. Karen, thanks for being on with us tonight. Did you say hi to Karen before? I didn't check it.
No, not yet. No,
good.
That's my BFF.
Wait a minute. Stop for a second here. Because you always say, against my will, that I'm your BFF. So is it Karen or is it me?
You are my BFF. But
you can't have two.
Yes, you
it's
can.
It's one or the other. Pick.
I'm not you're so mean to me.
Right now, Karen, let's go. Is it you or me?
You do get out in the parking lot.
In just a little bit, we're going to be asking Zeeke to pull some cards and all that kind of. Todd, it's humid out. Take off that beanie. I can't.
Wait, what did we discuss the other day? We are horrible about this. We had hoodies on. It was like 80 degrees out. We're wearing
I've got a
hoodies.
T-shirt on tonight.
I know you do. That's really good.
I have just very long hair on top. So
you don't want to see his hair when it's not styled. I have. That's all I can say.
BFF wouldn't say that. I can tell you that much right now.
Ooh, a spat.
A what?
A spat. I got drug into the middle of a spat.
We're not spat. No, we're not.
Shit, we've only spatted twice. Oh, I just swore we'll never get a Facebook post now.
You ruined it for us. Thanks.
We've only fought twice, and the first time was because she said she was my BFF, and I told her she wasn't. And then the second time was because, as her BFF, I was trying to protect her, and she didn't want that. So, that's how.
Oh, and then there's my version, which is the truth. So,
BFFs.
What did you say?
I can be both of y'all's BFFs.
That's
all right. Thanks, Zeke.
I'm out.
Do you have any spells for BFFs?
Yes, but I don't like to talk about them because it kind of involves it kind of involves manipulation. If you really want Todd as your BFF,
no,
please don't. Whatever I got to do, I'll send you cash. It just doesn't.
I thought you were going to say it did involve clothing or something.
Well, if that's what I got to do. I want to talk to you a little bit more about because we talked about your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
If you did a podcast, what do you think? What's your voice on the podcast? And obviously, as you and I discussed, podcasts can evolve. Ours evolved a little bit and continues to do so. But in a long-term vision of a podcast, what do you want to be able to offer content-wise?
Content-wise, I would like to talk about sort of like this. One of the things, like the things I do lectures over, like the history of spiritual baths or of doll magic, and sort of dispel a lot of things about what it means to be a magic user. But also, I want people to be able to connect with their what's called personal sovereignty. I want people to be able to have the best life possible. And I just think we're bombarded with images daily that sort of suppress, and just sort of subjugate us to things that we don't even want to be subjugated to. So one of the things that I'm big on, and I love to tell people, is that you have a lot more power than you realize. You have the power to manifest just the same as take example the first chapter in the Bible, Book of Genesis. We have the power to speak into existence, saying that our own reality, just like that. If I can use that as a good example.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we're all connected to that kind of power. And it's just a matter of accepting it right here. And then eventually it's going to come out right here.
It's so weird because I was listening to a podcast from one of our readers, Victoria, today, and she was talking about that very subject. Like right now is the time to manifest, to speak these things and bring them to fruition, bring them to, to real reality. And so it's kind of interesting that my day kind of started with that and it's kind of ending with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think a lot of people aren't aware of their own personal sovereignty, that they're their own monarchs in their own life. No matter what your situation is, whether you're living in a sprawling mansion or an apartment or anywhere, you have the ability to summon a better life for yourself. And that might not always manifest as currency or material things. It can manifest as spiritual things, because progress doesn't always have to be material.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you about your cards. What cards are you going to be using tonight? What makes them the deck that you chose tonight, other than the fact that you could actually show them on Facebook?
I'm going to be using what's called the primitive Lenormand. It's based off of a 17th century Lenormand deck of cards, and it was actually used for a game called the game of chance, or the game of life, sort of that theme back then. And and they would use it to play like an actual card game, like poker or gin rummy or something like that.
Gotcha. Now, what drew you to them? Because I guess I am a firm believer that people choose certain decks and certain cards because they feel that they're supposed to use them.
I was drawn to Lenormand whenever I first started out because I tried tarot, and I just ended up more confused than anything else because it was just so intricate, and I felt it's just so intricate and deep that I have my own personal interpretations of it, but there's no way I'd be able to remember every interpretation of the card. It just seemed a little more, it just wasn't the right fit for me. And I think I think our magical tools draw us to them, personally.
There you go.
I agree.
There you go.
They pick us. We don't pick them.
Yep.
If you're interested in having Zeeke read for you, he's going to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's going to do, if you want a card, just say, hey, will you draw me a card? And are you going to just draw at that point kind of thing?
Yep, I will draw. I will draw a single card and talk about it.
Okay.
And if I zone out a little bit, it's because I'm just sort of trying to figure in on what's being said to me.
For people who are worried about tarot, and I know that and tarot and card reading in general, whether it's tarot or something else, what do you say to those people who are a little concerned about it? How do you kind of squelch their fears?
Like concerned, like people being worried about like, oh, is it going to tell me when I'm going to die?
Right, all that stuff.
I just say, well, if the future is mutable. If you're going to die, nobody knows when we're going to die. Whenever I draw the coffin card, people are like, oh God, what does that mean? I'm like, chill out. It doesn't mean you're going to die. The coffin card usually just means the end of something, a transition, stuff like that. I have never predicted anyone's death.
I have to be honest, when you showed me the cards earlier, the coffin card came up and I pretty much was just about ready to check out and go home, just so you know about that.
You know what? A lot of people are like that. And in the, like, for example, the Weight Rider deck, the death card, people immediately think that means that they'll be, you know, it'll be untimely death and destruction. And it is, like Zeeke said, it really is, it means that something is going to end and maybe there will be a rebirth of something new.
Right.
That's what it truly means.
So how much of your reading, and I like to ask our readers this, how much of the reading is the card and how much is your intuition of the card?
The way I explain it, Todd, is the cards are kind of like binoculars. They help you focus in on something. Because whenever the person walks in the room, I'm usually already starting to get a pretty good stream on what's going on with them. And then the cards articulate what's going on. They just sort of help you pinpoint things that are going on in that person's situation. So the best analogy I have is the cards are like binoculars.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you ever have people come to you and ask you questions that maybe you don't feel comfortable answering or discussing?
There's far few of them that I'm not comfortable answering, because I'll answer most of them because at a little bit I'm kind of nosy and I want to know what's going on, and also I just believe people deserve to have direction. So that way I don't want people to fly into any situations blindly, because that's just not fair. And if I can be the great equalizer, I will be the great equalizer.
Gotcha. I would like to ask you would you pull, and we've done this a couple of times with some of our readers, but would you pull a card, not for Sandy or I, but for the podcast itself?
Sure.
And just see what you see.
That'll be
Watch
fun.
it come up the actual coffin.
The coffin card.
And in this case, you'll say it's dead. You're dead, Jim. Move on.
Yep.
Given it all she's got, Captain. I don't think she can take much more of this.
That's right.
I drew this for the podcast card.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I feel like you guys are moving into a season where you're going to finally be able to do something that feeds your soul and feeds the community at the same time.
I love it.
It makes me happy, but of course it also makes me want to puke.
Of course it does. Of course it does. But there is a recurring theme here, and we're always getting those kinds of positive cards, positive readings, and it's validation. It's good for us to know because we are woo-woo. So, you know, it's good guidance for us too to know, hey, we're going in the right direction.
Well, there you go. There is our final of our little family of card readers, intuitives right there, Brother Zeeke. We had Sudie Crouch earlier. Last week, if you missed last week's episode, you can listen back to that and learn more about Eric Ferdinand Backlit and Mystic Karma by Victoria, our family of intuitives that we are so lucky to have with us on the Sandy and Toddcast.
Oh my gosh. And don't forget, you can go right to our Facebook page, the Sandy and Toddcast. Subscribe, look for our events. We have Tarot Tuesday and or Woo Woo Wednesday almost every week, pretty much every week, Todd. And you can maybe get a chance to get your card read from one of our amazing intuitive tarot card readers. So always a lot of fun. And I just have to give a big shout out to Dan Phillips, who handles a lot of our music for the Sandy and Toddcast. Dan is amazing. He's very talented. And we'll have all of his information right in the show notes, along with Mystic Karma by Victoria. We'll have Eric Ferdinand Backlet's information, and Zeeke and Sudie. Everybody will be on our show notes this week.
Yeah, and if you need to reach out to him, you'd like to get a reading, that's a perfect way to do it, is reach out to him in those situations. So
that's right.
On to another week, another busy week ahead of us. We'll have another podcast coming out next week, a couple of live casts this week. Follow us on Facebook. Stay weirdos, the friends of the Sandy and Toddcast.
You got it. You got it. You got it. I'm so excited for you.
I had to write it down and put it in front of me.
Somehow I knew that. Just somehow I knew that. But good. You can read. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Sometimes. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.
How many more miles